All right, AP World. All right, AP World History students. This is chapter 21 right here. We're going to be focusing on both Mesoamerica and the Andean civilizations of South America here. Post-classical time period, after 600, really after 900, 1000. Okay, Toltec and Mexico in the 9th to 10th century. They basically come in after Teotihuacan, and that great civilization collapses. It's large state, very powerful military. They are close with the Maya as far as like in a similar area, and they kind of all draw their inspiration from, of course, the Olmec. In 1125, you get civil strife in Tula. In 1175, nomads would end up invading there. Not super important, just associate the Toltec with Mesoamerica. Now the Mexica are very important. That's the Aztecs. They're going to come into power. They're going to migrate down from the north Mexico down into central Mexico in the mid-1200s. Made up of warriors and raiders. They're very fierce people. Their big capital city was Tenochtitlan, which they established in 1345. They're going to establish it out there on Lake Texcoco. Going to be a very awesome city with 3 causeways, 3 land bridges. Kind of very protective and a huge population, between 200,000 and 400,000 people. The Spanish, when they came and invaded, had never seen anything like Tenochtitlan. There's no city in Europe that rivaled Tenochtitlan. They had the Chinampas. You got to remember those. That's the floating gardens. That was a good way for them to help their population, help supply food for the population. And by the 15th century, they're attacking a lot of people. They have a large empire of 12 to 15 million people. And because of rituals, sacrifices, they're constantly invading and fighting. They're an incredibly oppressive people. They treated the people that they dominated very poorly. They called for tribute. That tribute could come in the form of food or in human sacrifice. Now, most of our info about the Aztecs is actually going to come from the Spanish, so there's going to be some tainting of it. Warriors were the elite at the top of the social hierarchy. Many of the warriors, of course, were part of the aristocracy, meaning that they were rich noblemen's kids that were warriors. Women had no public duties. However, they did have an important role in society, or they were revered in society, sort of like Spartan women for giving birth to warriors. So they were revered in that way. Priests were also elite in this society because the religion had an important role to play. Think about the sun god and the sacrifices and stuff for him. Now, most Aztecs were farmers or slaves, vast majority of them, and they're going to have to pay that tribute and pay labor tribute as well. Artisans did have some privileges because of their great skill, because they were needed, they were necessary to make the Aztecs better fighters and stuff like that. They did have some privileges. Trade was very dangerous because you could be kidnapped and tortured for information. You could be a spy. So merchants are viewed a little bit differently in the Aztec society than they are from what maybe you're used to with Europe and in China as well. Religion, again, we talked about it. Bloodletting or human sacrifice. We're going to have to take that beating heart from the live human. All right. Now, when we talk about people in the north, what we're talking about is in modern day America, the American Southwest. You get the Pueblo, the Navajo in the American Southwest. They're going to have to use irrigation because it's very dry out there. You get the Pueblo buildings that we've talked about. In the east, it's a little bit different. The group you get in the east is the Iroquois Indians, and they'll be kind of one that lasts a long time, and they are, in American history, we talk a little bit more about them, one of the civilized tribes. 5 nations of Indians emerged to form the Iroquois. You had very specific male and female roles, which really isn't all that different from other societies. You had the mound builders in the middle part of the America. Cahokia, Illinois was one of the bigger ones. City of 15 to 30,000 people. No written record, so there's not like we can read about them from their standpoint. All we know about them is from archaeological discoveries. Now, switching gears, going south, we have the Andean Society of the Andes Mountains. And there are a couple. There's the Mochica. There's, of course, the most famous and most powerful were the Inca. Geography had an important role to play there. It limited trade because they're based off the Andes Mountains. It's a very, very long mountain chain that goes down the coast of South America. 8,000 feet and above, it's a tough place, and so trade is going to be slower there. There was a lot of bartering that went on locally. They don't really use currency. The Inca based their system off of hereditary aristocracy, so they have like an elite class who will be elite and whose children will be elite. Now, the chief himself was believed to have been descended from the sun god Inti. You will need to remember Inti. He's a pretty easy one. It's easy to say his name. And like many cultures, the sun god being the most important. They mummified. That was another thing that they did. That was a little bit different from other groups. They did mummify their rulers. Their priests were celibate, meaning no sex, and they were celebrated. So the priests had an important role to play in society there as well. Peasants have to give over their portion of food to the state. It's kind of their tribute that's required from them. They also provided mito, or labor tribute. Okay, they don't have a choice. They're organized in these clans, these aylus, and you're going to have to work for the state. Certain times when it's your turn, it's your turn. It's kind of your civic duty. They also had sacrifices, but it was animal sacrifices, not human sacrifices like the Aztecs had. So Aztecs, Mayans had human sacrifice. Inca did not. Their religion was based off of kind of rewards and punishments. So sort of like legalism with the Chinese, right? Last little part right here, we'll switch gears. We'll go over to Oceania for our last little bit. Australia was made up of foragers, people who are basically looking for nuts and berries and stuff like that. They're very nomadic. They're always moving around. They traded some with mariners or these sea people from New Guinea. Barter, again, no currency form here. They're trading stuff. The Aborigines myth was based off of their geography. And the Aborigines are still a native group that exists in Australia today. You had some islands out there in the Pacific, Tonga, Samoa, and Fiji. The Polynesians, you should know them as the ones who took the long voyages. Think Moana, as Disney's Moana. They found Easter Island. They found the west coast of South America. They brought back crops like the sweet potato. Hawaii. Hawaii's got that very nice climate. They're going to have 500,000 people by the late 18th century, so fairly populous there. Chiefs allocated land and organized men into military forces, so they have a significant amount of power. They're very centralized. The chiefs are basically making all the decisions and all the rules. Okay, so you have the other side of the world, essentially. That's not China, that's not Africa, that's not the Middle East, and that's not Europe. Here's the rest of it. Central America, North America, South America with the Indians, and then out in the Pacific Ocean.